Hello everyone, welcome back. This is Jumbo Commander with another deck tech, and today we have Mono White Control featuring Avacyn, Angel of Hope. Let's take a look at Avacyn. She's an 8-mana legendary angel, 8/8 flying vigilance. Avacyn, Angel of Hope, and other permanents you control are indestructible. Avacyn suits herself as a very powerful mono white control general. Her strengths are things like board wipes. Your stuff dies, my stuff doesn't. Control. Removal. White's great at all of those things. White's not so great when it comes to ramp and card draw, two of the most important components of Commander. So let's take a look at how we emphasize Avacyn's strengths and shore up some of her weaknesses. Let's see what kind of ramp we got going on. I want to pay particular attention to 3 pieces of artifact ramp. That's Dreamstone Hedron, Hedron Archive, and Mind Stone. All of these artifacts help you ramp, and also they can be cashed in for some card draw. Those are 2 really important parts of Commander that White is definitely lacking. Now, there's tons of other artifacts in here. Please fill them out. Don't only run 3 pieces of ramp. Soul Ring, Pearl Medallion, Marble Medallion, Thran Dynamo, Grim... I mean, just there's tons, so find what you... Let's move on to the ramp we have in Mono White, which are 2. There are 2 of them. Hey, don't make fun of my Mono White ramp. Core Cartographer is a creature that puts some planes onto the battlefield tapped. Knight of the White Orchid does it untapped, but you have to have less lands than your opponent. Trust me, you're going to have less lands than your opponent. Wayfarer's Bauble does the same on an artifact for very inefficient value, but this is Mono White, so Wayfarer's Bauble, get in my deck. And Sword of the Animist is an equipment that does it on attack. And with all these stupid small creatures, we're going to be equipping them up with this sword. Next up in our mana ramp category, we have cards that don't actually ramp your mana. Well, they do get lands into your hand, and making land drops is sometimes the best White can do when it comes to ramp. Weathered Wayfarer is 1 white for a 1/1, and if someone has more lands than you, you can pay a white and tap him to get, any land. Well, that's good. He can get the utility lands, the specialty lands, the best lands in your deck and put them into your hand. Okay, I like that. What else do we have? A Rescos Explorer. If someone has more lands than you, you get a plains in your hand. If more people have more lands than you get more plains into your hands. That's pretty good. Tithe is kind of the same as Rescos Explorer, but on an instant. And then there's Endless Horizons. Let's take a closer look at this interesting enchantment. 3 and a white for an enchantment that says, when Endless Horizons comes into play, search your library for any number of plains cards and remove them from the game, then shuffle your library. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may put a card you own removed from the game with Endless Horizons into your hand. So here's what this card says. Take all the plains out of your deck. They're exiled. And then every turn when you draw a card, you also get to draw from that pile of plains. I like that. It's definite card advantage. You definitely improve the card quality of your library by removing all the plains. And you do get to make sure you make those land drops every turn. I like this card. There is a risk though. Let's say you pull out every plains out of your library, and then someone destroys target enchantment, leaving all of your plains in exile. Oh god. If you find that you needed those plains, you might be ending your Commander game pretty early. Or desperately hoping for a non-basic land to be peeled off the top of your library. There's definitely some risks when it comes to Endless Horizons, but it's for sure a great card and you should not discount it. What else do we have? Land tax. It's a classic. If someone has more lands than you get to search through for 2 or 3 basics, actually up to 3 basics, and put them into your hand. This can thin out your deck, get you a bunch of land drops. Land tax is great. Hate Bears! Oh man, I love Hate Bears, and they're really fun in this strategy too, because what better way to control your opponent than to have creatures that disrupt what your opponent's trying to do? The first Hate Bear is not even a bear. It's not even a 2-mana 2/2. Why did I put this first? It's because it's so good. 1 white, white, white for a 3/3 flying angel, which looks badass on the art, by the way. I like that angel. Other non-black creatures you control get +1/+1. All right, an Anthem. That's pretty cool. Players can't pay life or sacrifice creatures to cast spells or activate abilities. Wow, let's go through our head and try and think of what things Angel of Jubilation shuts off. Well, what about Mirren? You need to sacrifice creatures in Mirren, and without sacrificing, it doesn't work out very well. Well, what about others? Oh, Prosh. Prosh, you sacrifice creatures all the time. That's like the combo. Not even secure a Tribe Elder? What? Erebos, you can't pay life to draw your cards? Toxic Deluge, you can't pay life to deluge stuff away? Necropotence? Oh, Necropotence. Skip your draw step. You can't pay life. You just never draw a card again. That is what I want. Oh, what gets better than that? Oh yeah, all of the pain lands. Not the pain lands. All of the fetch lands that you basically can't pay life, so you play a fetch land, it just sits there. Love Angel of Jubilation. Great hate bear. Alright, what's next? Oh, an actual bear! 1 and a white for a 2/2 flash. If a non-token creature would enter the battlefield and it wasn't cast, exile it instead. So let's go through a few commanders that we kind of have in our heads and see how Containment Priest affects them. Collie of the Vast. This commander destroys me. I mean, my opponent's player is so fast, and she puts these stupid creatures onto the battlefield. Oh, she doesn't cast those creatures. Oh, Containment Priest. My hero. They're both human clerics too, so they're like fighting each other. I like it. Rune of the Hidden Realm. That's right, you can't blink things because when they come back in, they're not cast, so they're exiled. Brago, you're screwed too. What's next? What's next? Mirren, I remember you. Man, your creatures come in straight from the graveyard. They're not cast. Get out of here. Oh, and they're exiled. They don't even go back to the graveyard for your, like, value stuff. No, no, no. Exiled. I love it. Also, you can't choose to put them back into your hand. They have to go into the battlefield if you have enough experience counters. Ooh. Last, we have Alicia. I shouldn't say last. This is just a list of commanders that are super popular that fit these strategies. There's dozens more, and tons of other cards that these hate bears can hose. These are just some of the more popular commanders that they, hate against pretty well. And nothing I hate more than Alicia who smiles at death, who pays white, black, to put a Master of Cruelties into play and knock me to 1 and then to 0. I hate Alicia who smiles at death. But wait, her ability doesn't work anymore because I got a Containment Priest. Ha 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 ha! Let's keep up these hate bears. We got Stonecloaker, 2 and a white for a 3/2 flash flying gargoyle. If it enters the battlefield, return a creature you control to its owner's hand. This can be some valued protection against some creatures or some hate bears that you really don't want to lose. Also, when he enters the battlefield, exile target card from a graveyard. Graveyard hate is super critical because the graveyard is a resource that we really need to attack, and in Commander, it's a resource that people definitely abuse. But a card I like better than Stonecloaker, Samurai of the Pale Curtain. It's a white for a Fox Samurai. Love it. 2/2. It has some combat math in there, but really what we care about is if a permanent would be put into a graveyard or remove it from the game. Just graveyard hate on a creature. That's a hate bear. Let's look at how that... Oh, Carador. Man, Carador. He doesn't get cheaper. He doesn't get the ability back to cast your creature cards from the graveyard. Man, what else? Gieson Giralf, you just mill things over and it goes directly into exile. There's no advantage. And remember, Carador and Gieson Giralf, they're not affected by Containment Priest because you are actually casting your spells. They're just going from the graveyard into play. But Samurai of the Pale Curtain does influence those cards. What else helps out with it? Mirren again. Yeah, Mirren's one of the most popular decks being built right now, which is why I keep mentioning Mirren over and over and over again. And this Graveyard Hate hoses her as well. Sidisi. Nope, nope. You're not getting any zombies, and you're not going to spider spawn and combo me out. Alicia again. No, you're not having that graveyard. You're not having any of that graveyard. I love it. It's great. Spirit of the Labyrinth. White 1. Each player can't draw more than 1 card each turn. I love drawing cards. Why is this stupid enchantment creature in this deck? Oh, it's because white sucks at drawing cards. We have cards like Scroll Rack to give us card advantage. That does... Oh, that doesn't draw cards. Okay, we have things like Mind's Eye. But we draw the cards on the other turn. So on our turn, we're only drawing 1 card. Okay, that's good too. What about... We have Land Tax. Like, that's our card advantage kind of stuff. So Spirit of the Labyrinth only influences us a tiny bit, but it can really mess up our opponents, especially cards like Nekusar. What about the discard your hand and draw 7 cards? No, no, no. Discard your hand, draw 1 card, and the Nekusar player already drew for the turn. Oh my god. Brainstorm. Oh, I love Brainstorm. Pay 1. Don't draw 3 cards. Then you put 2 cards from your hand on top of your library. It's like stunted growth yourself. Oh my gosh. Edric? No, you're not going to Edric. I'm sorry. What do we got next? What do we got next? Angel of the Dire Hour. All of these hate bears that aren't bears. It's making me upset. Another one with Flash. 7 mana Flash. Ugh. Man, I hate holding open 7 mana. This guy's... Yeah, this Angel's just... Okay. But... I was running him for a long time because of my meta. And the reason why is you can adapt all of these hate bears to fit your meta. Because when Angel of the Dire Hour enters the battlefield, if you cast it from your hand, exile all attacking creatures. I like this because you don't have to, this doesn't target, it just exiles attacking creatures. So with Narset Enlightened Master, well, it at least exiles Narset when you attacks. She still gets the trigger. Ugh. What about Prosh? It does take care of Prosh. Prosh goes in for a big combo, and then you can exile it. Well, Prosh is still really dangerous. Well, what else about it? Kalia again, especially when Kalia does things like gets Avacyn, Angel of Hope, or Ural. Ural the Miststalker is actually the reason why Angel of Dire Hour was in my deck. I would do everything I could to just keep Ural from killing me, and then I would just hold up Angel over and over and over again, because Ural can just... It's just hard to deal with. Scion of the Ur-Dragon, this is another one. Scion, you can't really target because as soon as he swings at you, they'll pay 2, and then suddenly he's a Silumgar that you can't target. Or he's a Mirror Wing Dragon, and you've killed all your own stuff. Yeah, that happened to me recently, stupid Mirror Wing Dragon. Anyway, Scion of the Ur-Dragon is definitely something that you don't want to target, you just want to get him off the board. Next up, Linvala, Keeper of Silence. 2 white for a 3/4 flying legendary angel. She also looks really cool. I like the scales of justice that she's carrying. And the double angel wings are pretty cool. Activated abilities of creatures your opponent's control can't be activated. Wow, so people use activated abilities on their creatures all the time. I mean, you want your creatures to do stuff in Commander. Well, commanders like Gave, Guru of Spores. It's just a 5-mana 5/5 that's hard to cast. You can't do any shenanigans with moving these counters and Spore guys around. Man. Marath, suddenly you don't have the flexibility of this commander either. Can't shoot things down, can't make elementals. Tassiger, you just got a 5/4 for Delve. You can't get all the value out of his ability. Oh man, what else? Azuri. You have an entire strategy built around this commander, just overrunning, and suddenly you can't activate it. Ghoulcaller Gisa, one of the most popular commanders in Mono Black, and she just doesn't work anymore. Thalia Heretic Cathar is a new inclusion. She's 2 white for a 3/2 legendary human soldier with first strike. She's not going into combat. What she's doing is slowing your opponents down by making creatures and non-basic lands your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped. It doesn't sound like a big effect, but it is. Being able to put everyone off by a single turn can be exactly what it takes for you to be able to, well, handle them, to control them. This is an imposing sovereign effect, but the non-basic lands is the really important part. I mean, fetch lands are everywhere in this format, and just imagine a fetch land comes into play tapped. Alright, fine. I'll finally untap it and fetch. I guess I'm going to have to fetch a basic. You can't even fetch any of your dual lands, any of your shock lands, because they'll come into battlefield tapped. I also like Blind Obedience. Now, Imposing Sovereign I don't run as a hate bear. You guys can. But I really like Blind Obedience. Artifacts, creatures your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped. Same effect. And Blind Obedience can be just mean. The Extort mechanic can just drain people over and over again. The Extort mechanic is very powerful in multiplayer. And one thing I want you to remember is this Orzhov icon thing, the white-black. Whenever you cast a spell, you may pay white-black. That's in the reminder text, so you can put Extort cards that have a single color identity in mono-white decks or mono-black decks. So Blind Obedience fits in this deck very well. Thalia, on the other hand, the original Thalia, who's kind of the quintessential hate bear. I mean, she's in, you know, the hate bears in Legacy. I mean, she's really powerful. She doesn't really belong in Commander. And making people pay one more, it's not as big of a tax as you would think. I mean, people are ramping like crazy. So I don't have the old Thalia in, but I think the new Thalia will be definitely an include in Commander decks for a long time. Haven Mind Sensor and Leonin Arbiter. These cards hinder your opponent's ability to search their library. Now in Commander, it's a 100-card singleton format. We have a lot of tutors. We search for lands, we search for equipments and enchantments, and we have demonic tutors, and there's a lot of tutors because, well, we build decks to accomplish a goal, and sometimes it's difficult to do that when you only have one copy of a card in your deck. So you want to improve the consistency with tutors. And what better way to punish your opponents than shut down their ability to do that? So Haven Mind Sensor is my favorite, 2 and a white for a 2/1 flash flying bird wizard. If an opponent would search a library, that player searches the top 4 cards of that library instead. I love it because it has flash. So they go searching for something, you flash this in, and you're like, oh no, top 4 cards please. And then they're frantically looking at the top 4 cards to just find something. So their demonic tutor turned into an impulse instead. I love it. Leonin Arbiter, he's fine. He deserves an include in this deck tech, but not my favorite because he's 1 and a white for 2/2 players. It's not opponents, that includes yourself. Players can't search libraries. And then all you have to do is to pay 2 to ignore this effect. So it just taxes them a little bit more, and taxing in Commander, it can work, but it's not as powerful as just flat out limiting their ability to search. There we see opponent versus players. So don't crack that fetch without paying 2 on Leonin Arbiter, or else your friends will make sure that you hate your own hate bear. Hushwing Griff. 2 and a white. For a 2/1 flash flying, creatures entering the battlefield don't cause abilities to trigger. Interesting. There's a lot of creatures that come into play and trigger abilities. In fact, I talked about a few of them earlier on. I mean, the Angel of Dire Hour, which was just okay, the Core Cartographer, which was kind of important, the Knight of the White Orchid. I mean, there's actually a few of them. Well, now that I think about it, there aren't that many in this whole deck. This whole deck actually only has 6. I mean, this is what I run, but my whole deck only has 6 ETB creatures. That doesn't feel like a lot, and actually it's not. White can have a lot of really great ETB creatures. I mean, there's Brago and Rune that share part of the white color pie. But in this deck, it's more hate bears and controlling. It's more about their static abilities, not really about their entering the battlefield abilities. So I actually think this effect can be really powerful. For example, my Brago King Eternal deck, has, just guess how many ETB creatures it has. It has 25. Of course, I'm flickering things back and forth all the time. And some Brago decks are going to have more. You know, mine, you know, does some manifesting shenanigans and some other fun stuff. And so it only has 25, which is still a huge portion. It's a quarter of the deck shut off by Hushwing Griff. All right, what about Mirren? I have a Mirren deck, and Mirren's based around value, right? You want to get some value from playing a creature and then get it in the graveyard and get it back and get the value again. How many ETB creatures does that deck have? Yeah, it also has 25. All right, let's pick another one. Let's do the whole color pie now. My Perforos deck, okay? My Perforos deck is, well, it's about playing creatures. You know, all of these decks are very creature-based. Brago, Mirren, Perforos. So how many ETB effects are there? Well, 20. Wow, 20. Now, Hushwing Griff is not going to work on every single deck, but it can hose huge decks. In fact, I think that after looking at this and analyzing this, I think I'm going to add Torpor Orb to my list as well, because I really like this Hushwing Griff Torpor Orb effect for influencing my opponents. Let's talk a little bit about the defenses. Shields up, guys. As a control deck, we have to be able to protect ourselves. Let's look at a few taxing effects like Ghostly Prison, Archangel of Tides, and Windborn Muse. All of these will tax your opponent mana in order for them to attack you. Now this makes it really annoying, and they might pay up a little bit, but this is going to shut off token armies, it's going to shut down alpha strikes in many situations, and really it's just going to make you less desirable to attack. So I originally had Moat in this deck, and then Moat got to be a bajillion dollars. So screw Moat. Let's talk about Magus of the Moat. And actually, Magus of the Moat is going up in price too. You can forget about these cards. They're kind of fun to be able to like drop Moat and be like, I will kill you with only angels now. Or Magus of the Moat and be like, I'm sorry, you cannot attack at all. But they're really not necessary. Let's go on to another one. How about Island Sanctuary? This is definitely discount. 1 and a white, you may decline to draw a card from your library during draw phase. I hate the sound of that, but in exchange, by the way, I love the template on this. In exchange, until start of your next turn, the only creatures that can damage you are those that fly or have island walk. Basically, you're immune to anything that doesn't have flying or island walk, and that's pretty good. I mean, if you want the true combo, you should go ahead and add Mystic Decree and say all creatures lose flying and island walk. Island Sanctuary, it's just fine. You know, I think that we can do a lot with the slide before where we tax our opponents into not attacking us. What other defenses do we have? Grand Abolisher. This is defense against counter spells and instant spells. During your turn, opponents can't cast spells or activate abilities, artifacts, creatures, or enchantments. I mean, it just shuts them down during your turn. Counterspells can be really annoying, and you need to be able to do stuff sometimes at sorcery speed, so Grand Abolisher can definitely clear the way. And also 8.5 Tails, just a little bit more protection. Avacyn has Indestructible, but people run exile effects, a lot of exile effects. Later on when we talk about removal, we'll talk about our own exile effects. But 8.5 Tails, white for a 2/2 Fox Cleric, another Fox, I'm gonna go Fox Tribal. And it basically protects your stuff. 1 and a white, target permanent you control gains protection from white until end of turn, and then you can turn target spell or permanent white. Protection is really powerful, and 8.5 Tails, with enough mana, can take over a game. In a control deck, well, you need some spot removal because sometimes you need an answer now. You can't wait around for a board wipe or Avacyn to save you. You just need to kill something. Also, before we get started, I want to point out this art. Isn't it sweet? It's from Path to Exile. I think it's from a WPN promo. Anyways, I really like the style. I like the expression and I really like this illustrated style. Very cool. So white has some of the best instant speed spot removal. It actually has some of the best spot removal in the game, so I really think I need to mention it. Like Path to Exile, Swords to Plowshares, Return to Dust. All of these are excellent and really critical in a control strategy. I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about these cool spot removal spells because it's more like a good stuff deck. And I want to focus on what makes Avacyn Avacyn. Also, Council's Judgment's good. It's also super fun. I like Council's Judgment. You should play Council's Judgment. Equipment. We have a little bit of an equipment sub-theme because it's white and equipment's awesome. Lightning Greaves. It basically protects our commander. She's kind of at the core of this deck, and if Avacyn is indestructible, we should give her Shroud too. Swiftfoot Boots also gives protection and helps her beat in a little bit faster. Sword of Fire and Ice, well, in all honesty, we just want to draw a card. So this is like 5-mana equipment that just says draw a card and all the rest is just flavor text. Sword of the Animist, we mentioned this earlier, but the ability to ramp in white is very important. So we have the 2 swords, Sword of Fire and Ice, Sword of the Animist, for card draw and ramp. And how are we going to find all these equipments? Steel Shaper's Gift, it's a tutor for equipment. Stoneforge Mystic, it's a tutor for equipment. Enlightened Tutor, it's a tutor for equipment. You can do whatever sort of equipment packages you want. I think this is a very critical, configuration here, but play with it, see what you like. Board Wipes. I like this art. The people just kind of like flooshing up into the sky. I'm pretty sure this is from Planar Cleansing, which isn't even in the video. You should probably run Planar Cleansing. So Avacyn, Angel of Hope, is indestructible and makes everything else indestructible. So if we destroy everything, we actually just have a one-sided board wipe where all of our stuff stays alive. Let's look at the 2 classic board wipes, Wrath of God, the original, and Day of Judgment, the fixed copy. I don't know why it's fixed. Actually, I do know why it's fixed. They didn't want like Wrath of God, like the religious connotation in it, and so they changed it to Day of Judgment and just made it kind of a functional reprint. But anyways, the important part is this says destroy and Avacyn is indestructible. So this is for 4 mana, can wipe everything off the board. Also, it's good to be able to answer everyone else's threats pretty early. You're going to have to board wipe a few times before Avacyn comes out, especially if your meta is pretty aggressive. Also, I should mention a card like Twilight Shepherd is something that people like to run, because without Avacyn, you can have a Twilight Shepherd in play and board wipe and then still bring everything back. Another effect like that is Second Sunrise. I personally don't run these because I like Avacyn and I'm okay if my stuff dies. I'm like, whatever, it's the price I pay for playing a control deck. But some people like the cool combo-y nature of, Twilight Shepherd, Second Sunrise, wipe, get everything back. It's especially good if you have creatures, if you have a deck that has a lot of creatures with enter the battlefield abilities. As you remember from the slide before, this deck doesn't, but I wanted to mention it in case you wanted to customize your EDH deck that way. Let's look at some of my favorite board wipes. Akroma's Vengeance. This is really important because it destroys artifacts and enchantments, because there's some nasty ones out there that we need to be able to answer. Austere Command also answers artifacts and enchantments and lets you selectively destroy creatures. I also like this because we run a lot of hate bears, so sometimes we can destroy enchantments and then big creatures and it leaves our hate bears alive. Rout is particularly powerful because you can cast it at instant speed, keeping your mana open for a flash angel or a flash creature, and then being able to rout when you need to can be really powerful. Fated Retribution is also very powerful because, again, it's that instant speed. You don't care that it's super... Actually, I do care that it's super duper overpriced, but I still like it because it's instant speed. Let's look at a few more board wipes. Elspeth's Son's Champion. It is a board wipe. Destroy all creatures with power 4 or greater. This is the same effect we had before. It keeps our hate bears alive while destroying, well, everything that we don't really like. Also, Elspeth's Son's Champion is a pretty big threat. Putting creatures onto the battlefield over and over again, 3/3/3, can be pretty powerful and good defense. Martial Coup does kind of the same thing, a good imitation of Elspeth. Destroy everything else and put a bunch of creatures into play. And Phyrexian Rebirth. Destroy all creatures, you just put one big-ass artifact horror creature onto the battlefield. So all of these are pretty expensive board wipes, but we have a lot of artifact ramp in here. We're trying to get to the late game. So I think that these combination board wipe, help finish the game cards are really powerful and important. Now we enter a different, darker category. This is my controversial slide, so let's talk about each card individually and see what kind of person we're dealing with here. World Slayer, 5 for an equipment. Whenever an equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, destroy all permanents other than World Slayer. So if you hit someone with Avacyn, it just destroys all permanents. It's like planeswalkers, lands, everything, except for your stuff's indestructible. So all your stuff lives, and you just destroy the rest of the world. I mean, one thing I'd like to say, though, is that if you have this equipped to Avacyn, you're gonna end the game really quickly, because 3 attacks from Avacyn and a player's dead. So that's one good thing about World Slayer, but, I mean, really, you're shutting down the game. Let's take a look at another one. Catastrophe. Catastrophe I like, because you're in control of how horrible of a person you're being. 4 white, destroy all lands or all creatures. So you can just destroy all creatures, fine. But if you really want to punish your playgroup, you can destroy all lands. Oh man, it's getting bad. It's getting bad. Navineral's Disc. See, this card was made a long time ago, and they fixed it since then. For an artifact, it comes into play tapped, and it says 1 tap, destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. Now, the ones that they fixed, like Oblivion Stone, they have you sacrifice the artifact, and then it destroys everything else. Navineral's Disc doesn't do that. It's 1 tap, destroy all artifacts. And normally, Navineral's Disc is an artifact. It would destroy itself. But if it's indestructible, you just have 1 tap, destroy everyone else's stuff. And then you do it again, and then you do it. It's just repeatable. Oh. It's certainly powerful. But I think once people see that you have this kind of lock, I don't know. It's up to you. It's up to you. Along with that, we have Magus of the Disc. Same thing. It's on a creature. Creatures are a little bit easier to exile, especially at instant speed. You notice the removal suite that I was running before. But this can definitely get you into some trouble. Along with that, we have cards like Armageddon that'll just destroy all the lands. But if you have Avacyn, not your lands. Ravages of War, it destroys all the lands except for not yours. Mass land destruction. So World Slayer, Catastrophe, Armageddon, Ravages of War. They can be just mean, and you need to be very careful before you go into it. I might make a video on mass land destruction pretty soon and how to play it and how not to play it. I think when you have an 8/8 flyer on the battlefield, it ends the game pretty quick, and that might be okay, but you definitely need to respond to what your playgroup is thinking. Iona, Shield of Emeria, is also something that is in this mean category. It's really a hate bear. I mean, you put it on the battlefield and, well, it hoses a color. I mean, it's a perfect hate bear. It's what this deck is all about. But you need to think before you make big decisions like including Iona in your deck. Before we move on to card advantage, I wanted to mention that there are a ton more board wipes out there than the ones I mentioned, and of the mean board wipes that I mentioned, I do run Catastrophe and Navineral's Disc, and that's it. So I thought you should know what I personally run, and you can choose your own level of meanness. But now on to card advantage. Now we have a problem with card advantage. We're in white, so let's see what kind of card advantage we can get. Ranger of Eos. Now don't laugh, I love this guy. First off, he has like a falcon and a puppy dog with him, which he's kind of a badass. So for flavor reasons, you could go get a Suntail Hawk and then, oh, what's the dog's name? Isimaru, the Hound of Konda. You can get both of those and play that with your Ranger of Eos, so that'd be pretty cool. Those aren't in the video. When Ranger of Eos comes into play, you may search your library for up to 2 creature cards with a converted mana cost of 1 or less. Reveal them, put them into your hand. So it draws you 2 cards, but it draws you 2 1-drops. Well, trust me, there's some powerful 1-drops. How about that Weathered Wayfarer we mentioned? Being able to get those utility lands later on in the game Weathered Wayfarer gets you card advantage. So the Ranger gets you the Wayfarer, which gets you even more card advantage. Great. How about a Mother of Runes? Gives good protection and lets your creatures get in. Or Serra Ascendant if you're a horrible, horrible person. I run Serra Ascendant. I don't think it's crazy. I think it's fine to have a, 6/6 flying lifelink creature for 1. But it definitely makes your Ranger Vios better. Kami of False Hope. It's like a little spore frog, but it's a spirit. Sacrifice him and then prevent all combat damage would be dealt this turn. Or even converted mana cost for Mikaeus the Lunarch, which can get huge and buy you more value later on in the game. So Ranger Vios is really great. I mean, he's kind of the White Mole Drifter, where you pay 4 instead of 5, you get a 3/2, and he's not flying, and you get 2 1-drops. I mean, he's perfect. In my deck, I run Weathered Wayfarer, Mother of Runes, and Serra Ascendant. I've run Kami of the False Hope, but that's meta-dependent. Mikaeus is worth a mention, but he's not in my deck. I personally don't mind running the Serra Ascendant, and only the opponent that I'm attacking really minds from that one. What other forms of card advantage do we have? Emiria Shepherd. So we have Recursion. White's pretty good at getting things back from the graveyard, and that is a form of card advantage. Emiria Shepherd gets things from the graveyard to play when you drop a Plains. Sun Titan, man, he is a classic. ETB and attack triggers get a permanent with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So if you really want to take advantage of Sun Titan, I would put in as many fetch lands as you could to be able to always get value out of him. I mean, getting a Hate Bear back late in the game is pretty good. Getting some of those artifact mana or a Mind Stone that you sacrifice to draw a card can be really, really good. But, I mean, just being able to get fetch lands and ramp with Sun Titan, that's powerful. I don't run off-color fetch lands in this deck specifically, but I mean, if you want to use Sun Titan to its best, do it. And Emiria, the Sky Ruin. Emiria is super powerful because at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 7 or more planes, you may return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. That's just any creature card. Emiria is pretty sweet and is a very low floor for inclusion. The land just comes on the battlefield tapped. I mean, it's not that bad. And if you ever get up to 7 planes, man, people are going to start looking at this land like there's going to be some problems. This deck does have a lot of utility lands in it. I mean, that's monocolored decks. That's what they get to have. That's one of their advantages. And so getting up to 7 lands, planes specifically, doesn't really happen by turn 7. It's more like turn forever. I hardly ever turn on Emiria. Last little bit of card advantage. Sword of Fire and Ice, I already mentioned it. Scroll Rack, I did mention it, but I want to pay particular attention because we can fill our hand with a lot of lands. Scroll Rack allows us to put those back and then draw a whole new grip from the top of the library. And actually, you're not even drawing, you're just kind of exchanging them, which means that Spirit of the Labyrinth definitely doesn't mess with Scroll Rack. This is where those fetch lands would help out a lot. Being able to shuffle your library after you Scroll Rack is very powerful. Mind's Eye lets you draw on your opponent's turn. Again, these are not good card draw spells, guys. This is 5 and 1. So this is 6 mana for your first investment of a card. So let's go through this in our head. 6 mana for 1 card, no. 7 mana for 2 cards, no. 8 mana for 3 cards, no. 9 mana for 4 cards, maybe 10 mana for 5 cards. There we go. Finally, when we get to 10 mana for 5 cards, Mind's Eye seems fine. That means it has to live for a long time and draw a lot of cards. I have it in my deck, but it's definitely an underperformer. What else we got? Sword of the Animist, getting lands out of your deck and on the battlefield, that's a form of card advantage. Shut up, don't make fun of me, I know I'm stretching. Land tax, oh gosh, more... It works with Scroll Rack, and that is definitely drawing cards. What else? Please, are we done? Avacyn Insurance. There's a lot of room for really great lands in this deck, but I just want to point out 3 that are critical to this particular strategy. Homeward Path, High Market, and Mirren the Moaning Well. If someone steals your Avacyn, you're kinda screwed. Most of your board wipes destroy. You don't want to mass exile because then it gets your own creatures. You do have like Swords to Plowshares and Path to Exile, but if someone takes your Avacyn, man, you do not want them to take your Avacyn. So I think that these insurance policies of, you know, tap each player gains control of all creatures he or she owns, or also defends against bribery, or High Market being able to sacrifice your commander, it's way better than the alternative. Politics. I love the politics of this deck, particularly because they're kind of difficult. Let's talk about a few of the pitfalls of playing a control deck in a multiplayer setting. Oh, people don't like you. I mean, you're running a hatebears strategy. You make it harder for your opponents to play the game, and people don't like that. So you're probably going to get a lot of aggression starting out. Well, and also, I mean, your deck is filled with board wipes. Everyone knows that. People are not going to want to overcommit to the board, and they're certainly not going to want to give you the benefit of the doubt. So you might have a pretty tough time politically manipulating this game. But I've found one particular strategy to be very effective, and it's simple. Ask your fellow players what you should do. So if someone's getting out of hand and you want to board wipe, don't just board wipe. Go to one of your other opponents and say, hey, do you think I should board wipe to like save us from this other guy? And so what happens there is it becomes a sort of 3-on-1 situation in a 4-player game. It's like you're board wiping to save the other 3, not really board wiping to save yourself. And that's a critical move when you bring other people into the decision-making process. And especially when you're like, oh, I don't know, do you think I should board wipe? And someone else says, dude, board wipe. The person that told you to board wipe, he seems to be the catalyst for this, and he's going to get a lot of the hate from the player that lost the most during the board wipe. Another element of politics I want to point out, I spent a little bit of time explaining some of the really mean things you can do in this type of deck, like blow up everything else everyone else controls, and you remain totally intact and everything's fine for you. As soon as you pull that kind of move, I mean, people are going to know, and it's going to be very hard for you to play your Avacyn deck. So be really careful about how many times you World Slayer all of your opponents into oblivion to win the game. Alright everyone, thank you so much for watching, and I really hope you enjoyed my Avacyn Angel of Hope ADH deck tech for my super mono white control build. I would really appreciate it if you clicked on those buttons like liking, subscribing, sharing, comment. Hey, put an email. It's like the same name of the channel, but it's like at gmail.com. Pretty cool. I would love to grow the channel and talk to you guys. So anything you could do to help me out with that would be really, really appreciated. I want to thank you all again and have a great day.